Good day, everybody. My name is Suzanne Gelderblom. I'm one of the psychologists working at Sobriety Treatment Center. Thank you for watching. Today, I'd like to discuss a topic which we are often confronted with in rehab, and that is why is it so difficult for people to get sober, and why is it so difficult for them to continue or to maintain sobriety? The first point that I'd like to discuss in this regard is, are you really motivated to do the work? Whenever we as human beings are faced with a problem, we have been able to actually acknowledge the problem, we are very eager to solve the problem or to want to change the problem. So we would say, yes, I'd like to spend less. Yes, I'd like to lose some weight. Yes, I'd like to work less. But it's not necessarily in terms of abusing alcohol or fixing your addiction problem. It's not as simple as, yes, I'd like to drink less. What it entails is that when you sober up, you need to maintain sobriety in order to stay in control of your life and of the quality of your life. So what we often hear from patients is that I'd like to be able to drink normally again. I'd like to be able to take all of the bad circumstances, the bad decisions, the embarrassing behaviors that goes along with alcohol abuse. I'd like that to also disappear. The reality in this scenario is that this person is still not ready to necessarily address the drinking problem because they have not really been able, or they haven't done the work to realize that they are struggling with an addiction problem. An addiction problem is not something as easy as to just put the bottle to the side or to just put it down or to just make a decision to never have a drink again or to be able to drink normally again. There's a lot of insight that needs to develop and a lot of work that needs to be done. So I think very often it's like realizing I'm spending too much, I need to spend less, but you're still not working with a budget. Same rule applies here. One of the second problems that I see very often in the struggle that people have with maintaining sobriety or even to sober up is that they're not necessarily taking it serious enough. We all have a narrative in our mind of what an alcoholic looks like or what an alcoholic is. And with the patients that we have at Sobriety Treatment Center, most of them, I would say, falls in the category of a functional alcoholic, which means that they are still able to go to work every day, they're still able to afford their home loans, they're still in marriages, they have children that they take to school every day, they're still functional employees at work, but at the other end, there's this side issue, the side problem that they are dealing with, which is progressively increasing and progressively, slowly but surely, taking control over their normal functioning in life. So what I often see with our patients is, like I said, they've got this narrative in their minds of what an alcoholic looks like, and then they would often measure up and say, but I'm not there yet. I can still go without alcohol for 2-3 days. I don't need to drink every day. Yes, I do have a drink or a couple of drinks too much over the weekend, but who doesn't do that from time to time? And this is particularly concerning for our functional alcoholics because they find means and ways to rationalize and to be able to justify them drinking every day. Because if I really had a problem, then why do I still have a good job? If I really had a problem, then why is my wife still with me? And this becomes then a very difficult situation for the therapist to work with in order to get this person to realize that it's not a matter again of just putting down the bottle and being able to prove to people that you are able to go without the substance for a while. The proof is in the eating of the pudding. In other words, are you able to maintain the sobriety? Like I often say, it's way easier to lose weight than to keep the weight off. Okay. Number 3, denial is very often one of the biggest reasons which we deal with, and which we find that people tend to struggle with in terms of sobering up, and then, of course, also maintaining sobriety. If you don't think you've got a problem, and if you're not in contact with reality, and this is something that we often see again with our patients here, is that they would say, well, you know what, nobody in my life really knew about my problem. And then the next day you would receive a phone call from the employee which says that um, we have been dealing with this individual at work for so long, and it's been really difficult because everybody sort of walks on eggshells around him or her, but we all know that there's a problem. So this is always very interesting to me, is that people are of the opinion that nobody knows that you have got a drinking problem, but in fact they may not necessarily be able to put their finger on it, but they do know there's some kind of problem present. This also goes along with that person convincing themselves that if I'm able to prove to myself and just to my family and to everybody else that seems to think that I've got a problem, that I can quit drinking, then I can prove that I'm not an alcoholic. So they often find it, especially if they in the category of a functional alcoholic, they often find it possible to maintain sobriety for a short period of time. But as soon as the damages or the emotional issues that drives them to drink becomes a reality again, then they find it difficult to maintain sobriety. Number 4, this is definitely one of the most important reasons why people struggle to sober up in the first place, and then secondly, to maintain sobriety. And that is the person not wanting the label of an alcoholic. We all know that when we look at movies, or when we join a support group meeting with the Alcoholics Anonymous, that one of the things that they do, one of the practices that they have, is that they want you to actually stand up, introduce yourself, say what's your name and surname, and then call yourself an alcoholic. Why is this so important? It's important to own the problem. It's important to acknowledge to the problem. The label, yes, there's a lot of stigma that's related to it, but at the end of the day, you need to, whether you call yourself an alcoholic, whether you call yourself an addict, whether you say that I'm struggling with a substance use disorder, at some level you need to be able to label your condition and make peace with it and accept it in order for you to start dealing with it. There is a saying that says you can't change what you have not acknowledged. So it is quite important to own the label. Number 5, not doing the work. Like I said before, it's quite important to realize that it's way easier to just sober up than to maintain sobriety. So when I say you need to be able to do the work, that means that you need to deal with the problem. You need to understand your problem, and you need to have to work at healing whatever damage drove you to want to drink. So it's important to realize that the substance alcohol had a specific function and a specific purpose in your life. And the purpose of the substance, in my opinion, is for you to, those damages that I've made reference to earlier, or circumstances, or emotional losses, problems, issues that everyone finds difficult to deal with. Everyone would like to um, close their eyes to and wish away. Uh, Alcohol, unfortunately, initially gives you that opportunity. It gives you the opportunity to not have to deal with those issues, to not have to deal with your reality or your circumstances. But the fact of the matter is, when you arrive at a place where your habitual drinking, your pattern of drinking, your abuse of the substance has become an addiction, and you can't function properly without, or you can't cope properly without the substance, then you've arrived at a place where you're not going to get any positive effect from the substance anymore. And this is normally where you become uh, sort of desperate in looking for solutions, in how to deal with your reality, and where people are normally open to wanting to solve the problem. But again, do they really know what it entails? Do they really know what the work is that needs to be done in order to sober up and in order to maintain sobriety? Like I said before, you have to do the work of healing whatever damage drives your drinking. Then number six, hiding your problem. Um, just this morning in group therapy again, I saw that, one of the ladies introduced herself and she said, apparently one of my family members feels that I've got a problem with the abuse of medication. So the fact that she says apparently means that she's still not at a stage where she's comfortable in admitting that she has developed a problem, or even admitting that she is um, struggling to cope in life. Okay. So what they often do is they hide their drinking problem behind other problems. So they would say, yes, my family member or my spouse or my husband or whoever seems to think that I've got a drinking problem or that I'm using too much medication, sleeping tablets or painkillers or whatever. But the actual problem is that I'm unhappily married. Now, when you sit down with that person, you start asking them, when did you become unhappy in your marriage? It is very often the case that the unhappiness started when the alcohol or the medication became a problem, and when your spouse starts to actually confront you with it. This is when the relationship problems begin. So they hide behind another problem, but the actual problem is that they need to quit drinking, they need to sober up, and they need to learn how to maintain sobriety. These are the six things that I have identified as factors that makes it difficult for people to sober up and then to eventually maintain sobriety. In my next video, I will continue discussing some of the reasons why it is difficult for people to sober up, and I will also look at ways of how to approach your decision to eventually say, I'm going to sober up, and how am I going to maintain sobriety. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.